An interaction Albany police had with a man they thought had a gun in his hand. The exchange was captured on the officer's body-worn camera. Until just a few years ago, we only had eyewitness accounts of incidents like this. But the police cameras have changed the way we view police work.
Hey, how you doing? Officer Ellis, Albany Police. How can I help you?
Nice to meet you, officer. This was an interaction I had with Albany police officer Derek Ellis. When he's on duty, he has his camera attached to his chest. How do you know when to record? How do you know when to hit that?
So any citizen interaction that we have.
The department started using the cameras shortly after Ellis came on the job 9 years ago.
Almost my entire patrol career, yes.
Officer Ellis doesn't really know what it's like to be without a camera recording his every contact with the public.
It does make you think, but it should. And again, that's that accountability that people want and that they deserve.
Do you think the camera has been a deterrent to bad behavior?
With my personal experiences here and working on this job, I don't think so. I think people are still going to do bad things, unfortunately.
Has that been a helpful tool?
I think it has, because it shows people the good, the bad, and everything in between.
This exchange in January of 2022 is an example of all of it.
Drop the knife! Drop it! Drop it now! Drop it!
A man carrying a knife runs toward Albany police officers. The officer fires his gun and hits him 3 times. The video led to the prosecution of the man who was shot and the vindication of the officer. Before you came on?
Yes.
What month?
February. I was the chief by the time we implemented the policy and started to purchase the cameras.
Brendan Cox, the current chief, was part of the command staff back in 2014 when the department got a grant to buy the cameras. Over the next year, they developed a plan and policy for using them.
We had to talk about officers' civil rights and what their rights were when they were out. And we took those baby steps on purpose because we wanted to make sure we got it as right as we could.
The body-worn and dash cams start recording as soon as the emergency lights and sirens are activated. For those other times, it's up to the officer to start recording. Do you have concerns that some might not activate, turn them on when they're supposed to?
I think it's a valid and a good question. And I think it comes down to, we can't just implement policies. We can't just train people. We have to make sure that we change the culture.
Part of that, Cox says, is letting officers know that the cameras are there to also protect them at a time when law enforcement is under more scrutiny than ever. Some of that scrutiny is warranted, especially after body cameras captured correction officers brutalizing an inmate.
When you look at an incident like Marcy, that issue goes beyond the body-worn camera issue. That issue goes down to how we treat human beings that are in our care and custody.
Cox says he's told new officers to be ready to be judged based on what those cameras captured at Marcy, even though it didn't involve police officers.
So there are going to be people that are going to look at you and they're going to say things to you about that and accuse you as if you were those corrections officers, and clearly you are not.
Earlier this month, Cox released this video immediately after an officer-involved shooting. Almost immediately, you put out the relevant clip as it related to what happened there. Why?
Because we have a duty for transparency and accountability, because we have a duty to answer questions to the public. Chief
Cox there. Coming up at 5, I'll talk to the chief about the transparency and accountability and why he says it's more important than ever.
We're seeing more than we ever have before.
We are.
For sure.
Body-worn cameras have been in the spotlight for a while now, but especially since they captured the beating of an inmate at Marcy Correctional Facility.
Many area police departments have been using body cameras for several years, capturing incidents like this. Those departments say they're a really valuable tool for crime fighting as well as transparency. Mark Maholland checked in with the Albany Police Department and joins us now with our 13 Investigate story on this. Mark.
Well, Steve and Rachel, Albany has used the cameras for about 8 years now. The chief telling me they're an expected part of the uniform, and they've often been able to calm the concerns of the public. Officers like Derek Ellis here attach their cameras to their vests at the start of every shift. He's been wearing one for almost as long as the 9 years he's been on the job. Officer Ellis says he likes that they record everything, giving him another set of eyes. All of Albany's officers wear them. They're activated automatically when lights and sirens are engaged. Other times, it's up to the officers to activate them themselves. Earlier this month, they captured this officer-involved shooting. The chief decided to release the relevant clip just hours after it happened.
That technology gives us the ability to not just answer the question, but to also back it up and say, I'm not only telling you that this is what happened, but I can show you that it happened.
Coming up at 6, the cameras are helpful in gathering evidence and police accountability, but are they a deterrent to crime? Steve and Rachel, back to you.
All right, thank you for that, Mark.
We've seen some of the higher profile exchanges, officer-involved shootings captured by police body-worn cameras, one just this month and another in 2022. The cameras are recording during every shift, every day. Tonight, I sit down with Albany Police Chief Brendan Cox to focus on the ins and outs of police-worn body cams.
So you'll see again, we get that 30-second buffer.
Officer Derek Ellis has been on the job for 9 years. He doesn't think much about wearing his body camera. It's another part of the uniform, like the badge or the radio.
It does make you think, but it should. And again, that's that accountability that people want and that they deserve.
Here in Albany, officers have been wearing them since 2017. Current chief Brendan Cox was assistant chief when they started developing the camera policy in 2015.
We had to talk about people's civil rights when we were on the street. We had to talk about officers' civil rights and what their rights were when they were out.
Cox calls the cameras a really good tool for evidence gathering and transparency and accountability, but they're not necessarily a deterrent. Do you think the camera has been a deterrent to bad behavior?
With my personal experiences here and working on this job, I don't think so. I think people are still going to do bad things, unfortunately, but the camera's just a way in the back end to kind of record it and show everything from our point of view.
Earlier this month, just hours after this police-involved shooting where officers fired at and shot a man who they thought had a gun and had taken what they called a shooter's stance, the chief decided to release the relevant portion of video. Almost immediately, you put out the relevant clip as it related to what happened there. Why?
Because we have a duty for transparency and accountability, because we have a duty to answer questions to the public.
The chief looks at the body cam video of the beating by correction officers of a man who later died as not only tragic, but a problem for all who wear the badge.
When you look at an incident like Marcy, that issue goes beyond the body-worn camera issue. That issue goes down to how we treat human beings that are in our care and custody.
He says he's told new officers to be aware of that.
There are going to be people that are going to look at you and they're going to say things to you about that and accuse you as if you were those corrections officers, when clearly you are not.
The chief also says APD is short roughly 80 officers and says part of the problem recruiting them is increased scrutiny.
I don't think it's the body-worn cameras necessarily. Do I think some people don't get into public safety anymore because they're like, well, why do I want to be on video 24 hours a day? Why do I want to be scrutinized?
Chief Cox says the cameras also give officers their own chance to record when the public is using their cell phones during any interaction.
Such a candid conversation about such a big topic.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, great job. Thank you so much.